I think they're 3/16 deep, maybe an eighth. And then you'd have one, for the front, you'd have one for the back, a groove. Then you have the back. And then, so you cut these dados. And then in those dados would go the shelf track. And it would go in there. It's metal and it has little tiny headed brads that about every 6 inches that nail it to the plywood. They're short little brads, so they nail this stuff in. And then in about 1-inch increments, they have a slot. And I could bring this stuff up. I'm sure most of you know what I'm talking about because that's the way we did adjustable shelving and a lot of cabinetry. And we can do this in closets and stuff too, but closets are generally cleated, but I'm gonna get back to that. But we did it in most cabinetry before Euro style or 32 millimeter or frameless really became popular here in the US. You would cut a dado, or a groove rather, and lay in these supports, which are they would be just slightly proud or dead flush, but they're shaped like this. They have a little radius. So if you put them dead flush, that radius would be down in there. So I like to make them so they're just slightly above the radius, and then your shelf can only be as tight as standard to standard, shelf standard to standard. Oh, there's also in adjustable shelving, there's shelf standards and brackets too. And I'm going to get to that, adjustable shelving. So shelf standards with brackets. Okay, I think you all follow that. And then the shelf clip is shaped like this. And this go into two of these holes, and they kind of compress it and it snaps in. So that's what's sitting out there that supports your shelf. This little piece of metal. You buy them by the box, the clips themselves, the standards I think they come in 2, 4, and 6 foot increments. I think I actually can get them as much as 8 foot increments. You can do tall shelving like for garage storage and stuff like that. But we don't use these much anymore, if at all, because the whole system is so much more efficient. Especially if you've got a multi-spindle borer and you just put your work in there and you step on the pedal and it bores all those holes, 23 of them in this case, and then you move it down and bore more. If you're doing a tall cabinet, like a 7 or 8 foot tall cabinet, you would just keep moving it and get yourself index on your last hole so that all your holes were on 32 millimeter increments and they were front and front and back on both sides, so everything lines up, and then it's just putting a shelf support into a hole versus cutting these pieces of metal, cutting the dado, dropping these guys in, nailing them off. It's a lot more work. So we like the whole system. We like 5 millimeter holes, but you do have, I'm gonna put this back before I forget, and that shelf falls down. And we don't want any shelves falling down. No, we don't. Not good. Yeah. All right. So besides a 5 millimeter hole pattern, there are 1/4 inch shelf supports that go into a 1/4 inch hole pattern, and you can buy those too readily. But I don't know of any multiple spindle borers. Those you probably have to have a jig. You can buy jigs, or you can lay out and do it on a drill press or do it by hand. But really, if you were using 1/4 inch shelf clips and you were doing, say, a base cabinet, just for instance, you might just do a side oh shit. Sorry for swearing. You might just do a side if this is a cabinet side and you're going to build this in your garage or your shop or wherever, and you don't have a multi-spindle borer or a jig or 5mm bits, but you got 1/4-inch bits, good clean ones. You might, if this is a base cabinet, you know you're going to have one shelf. So in terms of adjustable shelving, you don't need a whole lot of holes because you're sure as heck not going to have a shelf down here or up here. So you might do a series of maybe 3 or 4. Now that you could lay out and measure and measure. It still would be better if you have a bunch of sides, base cabinet you're building, would be to make a plywood jig, and so you'd index it with the top or the bottom so that these holes would all be indexed from the top of the bottom and they would all line up because you'd be going into your template. That's what those were for, to guide the drill bit to where you want to go, to make adjustable shelves. In terms of cleated shelving is what I really want to talk to you about today more than anything, because that's going to be the best bang for your buck in terms of not cabinets so much, but closet shelving, linen closets, storage closets, places in your house, niches in your house that you want to put shelving in. So let's just say you've got a niche and it's behind a door and it's in your kitchen or off your kitchen, and when you open that door, let's look at it in a down view, okay? So you've got a wall, 2x4 wall, and at one point your wall does this, and let's say it does it, I don't know. Let's say it's 18 deep. Okay, and then you had a jamb in here, and let's say it's 18 deep from here, and you had a jamb in here and a door, and you've got a butt-hung door in here that swings that way. You open that up, and then there's your shelves. And so at 18 deep, you could go full depth right to there. And let's say you're going to do your bottom shelves at 18. You're going to have some shelves at 16. You're going to have some shelves at maybe 12. And so in laying this out, you're going to have fixed shelves. This is going to be fixed, not adjustable in this case. And so let's just carry that down. The opening, right? Whatever it is. Let's say it's a 2-foot opening, and that's what you're looking at for the opening, right? The floor goes like that, and then here's your opening, and it's up at the header height that's 6'8". It's got a door in it, right? So it's 6'8", and it just returns straight across. So you want to lay out your shelving. So let's lay it out. Let's say we want 16 inches of space down here. And then we want to go 12 inches and 12 inches, and then we want to do some 10s and 10s. So let's see, we've got 80 inches to work with in that opening. And if we're going to make this spacing 12, and this spacing 12, and this spacing 10, no wait, I said this spacing 16, right? And that 14, and that 12, and that 12, and that 12, and that leaves 10. Just for purposes of argument, let's see if we can get that. So 16 and 14 is 30, plus 36 is 66, so 76, so we're pretty damn close. So that adds up to, in terms of spacing, 76 inches, right? 24 and 10 is 36, plus 30 is 66, 36 and 10 is 46, plus 30 is 76. And so if these shelves themselves are going to be 3/4 shelves and they're not going to be edge banded, then that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shelves. That's 5 times 3/4, that's 15 quarters. So that's 15 quarters is 3 3/4 plus 3 3/4 gives you 79 3/4. So that pretty much fills up your space. So that means this space is 10 3/4. So You may want to do this to scale and work it out, but I find that if you've got an opening and you're going to, let's say this is going to be a pantry, you're going to want to just get there with your tape and measure the stuff like cereal boxes, the cases of sodas, or whatever you're going to put on the floor, whatever's going to go on the floor, whatever you think is going to go on the floor, try to anticipate or get your customer to anticipate, and then measure your cereal boxes, make sure they fit in that 14, and then all the other stuff, 12, canned goods, all that, right? And then I do also suggest doing these two at full depth, like maybe 18 inches deep, full depth, so all the way out to that jamb, and then step them back, right? So step them back, so maybe these shelves start being 16, and then 14, and then maybe 12 deep up on top. So your shelves, as you can picture them, staggering, so you can access all this stuff, and then you've got a shelf that is back a little bit, so you're not reaching back in this tunnel, and this one kicks back a little bit, and maybe another one's the same height, and then that one's back a little bit. Follow me? Because if you did them all at 18, you'd be looking at this bank of 18-inch shelves, cleated shelves in front of you, and you'd have a pretty far ways to get back, right up here. So you'd be better off starting the shelves. So what's a cleated shelf? We know it's a fixed shelf, and in the case we're generally going to use 3/4 plywood, and if you use plywood, plywood's okay if you can stand the plywood edge, or if you edge band it with something 3/4. MDF is really good because MDF is pretty darn stiff and you can ease the edge. I like easing the edges, and a lot of times on a piece of plywood we'll do a shelf edge banding. So if that's the edge of the shelf in plywood, then we'll do an edge band and nail on a piece of 3/4 or 1/2 inch by maybe 1.25 inches, 1.5. So you see solid wood, and that paints out a solid wood, and you don't see the plywood if you're going to paint it. Okay, but cleated. What is cleated shelving? Any answers out there? Oh, wait, nobody's here. So cleated shelving. Let's just look and see what cleated shelving is. Cleated shelving, yes, cleated shelving. Okay, so in cleated shelving, let's draw a face view of a closet. Let's make that same closet. We'll say it's 24. It's 24 wide, 80 inches tall, because that's the doorway. All right, and we're gonna cleat it, and then we're gonna cut shelves that are gonna be supported by our cleats. Now your cleats you can rip yourself. They can be 1/2 inch thick. I like 3/4 material, and you can buy like a 3/4 by 2, which is 1.5. You can buy a 3/4 by 3/4. Your cleats can be almost anything. You can make them yourself out of MDF. You can rip them yourself out of solid stock, or ideally, for me, I like to buy my stock. If I can, buy it in the dimension I would like, so I don't have any more steps to do that I don't have to, or that I can avoid doing. Where's my water? So three-quarter by 3/4 is a good looking cleat, and it works fine. It's 3/4 by 3/4 or 3/4 by 2, so 3/4 by, that would be a 1 by 2, would be 3/4 by 1.5. 1/2 inch is also fine, but for purposes of argument, we're going to use 3/4 cleat. So it's going to be 3/4 by 1.5. That's a 1 by 2. 1 by 2 cleat. You should be able to buy this, and maybe even buy it finger joint. So it's a bunch of small pieces held together with these finger joints, and so it makes a long piece. And pre-primed, if you like, if you're going to paint them out. But you've laid out that spacing, right? Let's say that first spacing is whatever it is, 16 inches off the deck. And that's to the top of your shelf, and you could say it to the bottom, but let's, for purpose of argument, to the top of your shelf. So that 16 is right to here, and that's where you're going to have a level line, and you're going to have a cleat. You're going to have a cleat across the back, 3/4 by 1.5. You're going to nail into the corner and into any stud you might have, and then you're going to have a cleat going this way, right? So if we look down on our 18-inch deep by 2 by closet, you're going to have, and you remember you got a jamb in there too. You're going to have a cleat running across the back wall, not mitered, just butted and nailed to studs, and then a cleat that comes off the jamb and butts into it. And that's nailed to hopefully studs. You got some nailing, or you've anticipated it. And then you're going to have cleats. You're going to lay out, it's going to be dead level. You're going to have level lines marked. And you can pre-cut all this stuff and press fit and pop in your cleats and their returns, right? Get all that stuff nailed off. And then once your cleats are nailed off, dead level in the spacing you want, then you're going to cut and fit your 3/4 material, which is going to go over the cleat. You're going to put it in like that.